One of the art movements is the popular art movement of the late 1950s and 1960s was inspired by commercial and popular culture. Although it did not have a specific style or attitude, pop art was defined as a diverse response to the post-war era's commodity-driven values, often using commonplace objects such as comic strips, soup cans, road signs, and hamburgers as subject matter or as part of the work. Pop art was a descendant of Dada, a nihilistic movement current in the 1920s that ridiculed the seriousness of contemporary Parisian art and more broadly, the political and cultural situation that had brought war to Europe. Marcel Duchamp, the champion of Dada in the United States, who tried to narrow the distance between art and life by celebrating the mass-produced objects of his time. He was the most influential figure in the evolution of pop art. Other 20th century artists who influenced pop art were Stuart Davis, Gerard Murphy, and Ferdinand Ledger, all of whom depicted in their painting the precision, mass production, and commercial materials of the machine industrial age. The immediate predecessors of the pop artists were um, Jasper Johns, Larry Rivers, and Robert Rauschenberg, American artists who in the 1950s painted flags, beer cans, and other similar objects, though with a painterly expressive technique. The first artist that I would like to introduce to you is Andy Warhol. He was born on August 6, 1928, and he died on February 22, 1987. He is an American. For a little background about Andy Warhol, he ventured into a wide variety of art forms, including performance art, filmmaking, video installations, and writing, and controversially blurred the lines between fine art and mainstream aesthetics. When he graduated from college with his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in 1949, Warhol moved to New York City to pursue a career as a commercial artist. It was also at this time that he dropped the A at the end of his last name to continue Andy Warhol. He landed a job with a Glamour magazine in September and went on to become one of the most successful commercial artists in the 1950s. He won frequent awards for his uniquely whimsical style, using his own dotted line technique and rubber stamps to create his drawings in New York City.
One of the artworks of Andy Warhol is the Campbell soup. Andy Warhol's Campbell soup cans are perhaps the most well-known images of American modern art. Initially created as a series of 32 canvases, the soup cans gained international acclaim as a breakthrough in pop art. When the paintings were first exhibited in the 1962, they were displayed together like products at a grocery store. Each soup can correspond to a different flavor and resemble the actual image of the red and white Campbell soup cans. Warhol first exhibited Campbell soup cans in the 1962. As for the creation or the purpose of the creation, many stories say that Warhol's choice to paint soup cans reflected on his own devotion to Campbell soup as a customer. The most accepted story on this subject is that Warhol was having a conversation with a friend who encouraged him to paint something that you see every day, something that everyone would recognize. Campbell soup was suggested as the appropriate brand, an iconic American product that was readily found in cupboard across the country. Another artwork of Warhol is the Coca-Cola. I just paint things I always thought were beautiful, things you use every day and never think about. This Warhol statement epitomizes his ethos. His works put ordinary items in the front and at the center. This idea applies to the hand-painted portrait of a Coca-Cola bottle, another challenge to the domination of abstract expressionism. Warhol's Coca-Cola is equal in size to many of the popular canvases of the time, but is devoid of their abstractions. However, there are some other similarities here. as in Barnett Newman's popular Station of the Cross series of works. Coca-Cola is comprised of a large black mass on a white background. The bottle jumps out at the viewer, demanding the kind of attention Motherwell's profound canvases received, yet now the sense of irony rings. Coca-Cola's relationship with Andy Warhol began in 1962. This is where he also began using the iconic Coca-Cola bottle in his pop art. As for the purpose of the creation, Warhol depicted Coca-Cola as the subject matter in this work, as it is an icon of mass-produced consumer culture at the same time. The repetition and the redundancy of the green Coke bottle reflect the dominance of this product in American society. As Warhol said, you can be watching TV and see Coca-Cola, and you can know that the president drinks Coke. Liz Taylor drinks Coke, and just think you can drink Coke too. A Coke is a Coke, and no amount of money can get you a better Coke. It somehow reminds someone of the equality in this society. No matter who you are, you have the same equality of a Coke. Warhol used silk screening to create this masterpiece. This technique allows Warhol to produce this piece endlessly. Although it is a printing, each bottle is slightly different from another one. Some bottles are even empty, and it is created a lively atmosphere. Moving on to the next artwork, Gold Marilyn Monroe. Gold Marilyn Monroe is an art piece composed of a photograph of the actress Marilyn Monroe's face centered on a large gold-painted canvas. Warhol based this portrait on a publicity still from the 1953 film Niagara. He painted the background gold before silk screening the boldly colored face in the center, adding black to show her features. Even as Warhol canonizes Monroe, he reveals her public persona as a carefully structured illusion. This painting lives at MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York. Marilyn Monroe was and still remains one of the biggest sex symbols of all time. When she was alive, her personal life was more of interesting than her professional one. She had already been married for several times. Like many of her fans, Warhol had become fascinated by the idea of popular figures like Monroe who live unimaginably glamorous lifestyles and who had attained an almost mythical status as Hollywood icons. This artwork was completed in 1962, the same year as Monroe's ultimately death. As for the purpose, the 5 rows of the depict resemble the movie-like strips that acknowledge her status as an icon. The repetition of her image symbolized mass production, while the depict style used in the portrait was inspired by the Byzantine icons of Christian saints. By placing Marilyn Monroe's portraits in the depict, Warhol was commenting on the saint-like nature that fan assign celebrities, which in turn causes the public to approach celebrities with some sense of holiness and immortality. Although deeply fascinated by their professional lives, Warhol was just also interested in the struggles and suffering these women endured behind their painted-on smiles. Case in point, Warhol painted Marilyn just 2 weeks after she had committed suicide.
The next artwork would be Slip. Slip is one of the artist's earliest films and his first foray into durational films, a style that became one of his signatures. This 6-hour movie is a detailed exploration of John Jarno's sleeping. Warhol's lover at that time, the viewer sees Jarno through Warhol's eyes. A strip of Jarno's naked body is in every scene. Although this seems to be a series of continuous images, it is actually 600 of foot rolls of film layered and spliced together, played on repeat. Repetition was at the heart of Warhol's oeuvre, as well as his fascination in the mundane. All people need to sleep. Warhol once again transformed banality into artistic expression. This art was created in 1964, and as for the purpose, as usual when discussing his projects, Warhol understands the actual amount of thought and planning that went into sleep. Kali Angel notes that storyboard drawings found on the original 100-foot film boxes for sleep indicate that Warhol experimented with a number of different different camera styles and complex editing techniques, including a handheld, moving camera and multiple shots on each roll before settling on his trademark minimalistic style of a single shot continuing over full-length camera roll. The final editing of Sleep is a complex montage of May shots of portions of Charles' body. Angel notes further that the drawings on the film boxes were made by Warhol but by the editor of Sleep, Sarah Dalton.
Now let's talk about Warhol's artwork, Orange Car Crash. Death and Disaster loosely link a collection of more than 70 artworks, with their subject mainly being suicides, car accidents, tainted cans of tuna fish, and electric chairs. Andy Warhol used death and disaster to try and lull the masses into accepting death, disasters, and tragedies as part and parcel of life. Orange Car Crash is one of the few works from the series that took up much of the artist's attention, though he used the same photo silk screening technique to repeat the image of the car crash 14 times. While the repetition of the gruesome pictures and their fragmentation and degradation stand out, it is the areas around the canvas that the artist left blank that are crucial in inducing the emptiness of death. Difference from sparkling Coca-Cola art, what made Warhol famous, the topic of a car crash is grim and dark. The reality of car crashes is cruel. 1.25 million of people die in car accidents every year. As Andy Warhol's displayed the industrial nature of producing Coca-Cola, he shows the industrial production of car crashes on roads. In the time of this painting, there was 41,723 lethal consequences of car accidents in the USA in 1963. Luckily, today this number is 11% lower than the painting. It's obviously still relevant considering the amount of people dying every year from this one particular reason. This artwork was created in 1963. As for the purpose of the creation, Warhol is reminding the viewers that abstract expressionism is now dead. So maybe Warhol is not so much involved in popular art, but rather providing very specific and elite art world commentary. Similarly, Warhol's electric chair series has a silent sign at the back of the depicted electrocution room, which Warhol connects to John Cage's modernist work with the sound. And even further, Warhol's Race Riot series is a response to many popular abstract works that are each labeled Black Series from modern artists such as Jackson Pollock, Robert Rauschenberg, Ad Reinhardt, and Frank Stella.
Is Roy Lichtenstein. He was born on October 27, 1923, and he died on September 21, 1927. He is an American, and for the short background about Roy Lichtenstein, he was one of the first American pop artists to achieve widespread renown, and he became a lightning rod for criticism or the movement. His early work ranged widely in style and subject matter, and displays considerable understanding of modernist painting. Lichtenstein would often mean, maintain that he was interested in the abstract qualities of his images as he was in their subject matter. However, the mature pop style he arrived at in 1961, which was inspired by comic strips, was greeted by accusations of banality, lack of originality, and later on even copying. His high impact, iconic images have since become synonymous with pop art, and his method of creating images, which blended aspects of mechanical reproduction and drawing by hand, has become central to critics' understanding of significance of the movement.
One of the artworks of Roy Lichtenstein is the Anne Maybe. Anne Maybe is perhaps the most famous motif that pop art titan Roy Fox Lichtenstein ever created. The painting with the beautiful blondie girl has become an icon of pop art. Nevertheless, the work didn't fall into an aesthetic inflation like so many other pop art images. The beauty of the blonde comic lady has not been tarnished over the decades. The integrity of this particular artwork is surely based on the quality of work itself, but at the same time, the very limited number of high-quality prints made after this image accounts for stability. A real edition of prints has never existed. It's some single screen prints that are traded, and very few of these are signed. This artwork was created in the 1970s. As for the purpose, Anne maybe depicts an attractive girl, which is typical of Liechtenstein's romance comic adaptations. As it is a common theme among these works, she awaits a man in um, she awaits a man in a vague but urban setting. He had a desire that his paintings look as mechanical as possible, although he was a painter. Rather than selecting subject matter from photographs by an individual, he selected teen and action comics, such as the obvious source for this artwork, as subjects since they were illustrated by themes that produced source material that was devoid of personal elements of style. Another artwork of Roy Lichtenstein is the Blanc. Blanc is a monumental painting depicting an airplane that has been shot down in the midst of war. The plane has been flipped over from the impact of the missile. The words of the same name as the painting are in bold red color amidst the yellow, red, and black of the fire. The word blanc, together with the blatant display of explosion, emphasizes the sound and force of the attack. The shadow of the pilot emerging through the escape hatch at the bottom right of the hand corner of the canvas leave the viewer in suspense regarding the pilot's survival. This artwork was created in 1962. As for the purpose, the work is like a comic book panel with bright colors and exaggerated gestures for the purpose of conveying character actions and movements throughout the comic. Featured in this artwork is the titular Blanc and a pilot ejecting from an exploding plane. Other than the color, however, this work is almost a perfect copy of a panel from the same from a copy of a panel from the comic of All American Men of War. Lichtenstein also borrowed another scene from the same comic, which he titled Bois. Now for Roy Lichtenstein's Taka Taka. The focal point of this painting is a machine gun with a hail of bullets emerging from its barrel. In the smoke above the gun are the words Taka Taka. The top of the painting consists of a yellow band, which contains the words "The exhausted soldiers, sleepless for 5 and 6 days at a time, always hungry for decent chow, suffering from the tropical fungus infections, kept fighting." Lichtenstein changed the image he was working for by enlarging the text box so that it occupied the third space, it occupied a third of the total space. This places pressure on the image, causing it to be both more condensed and more intense. He also enlarged the words "Taka Taka", modified the text, and changed the dimensions of the surrounding frame. This artwork was born on 1962. As for the purpose, in the view of critic Steven Weisenberger, Liechtenstein reimagining creates a tension between the narrative and graphical content because the exhausted soldiers are absent. Taka-taka is a subversion of the interpretive conventions of pop culture, but more important, it integrates a shared idea about war. That war's sublime violence heroizes, implicitly comparing Taka-taka to Picasso's Guernica. Art historian Klaus Honeth states that the work's use of the cartoon idiom in combination with elements of written language demonstrates that art does not have to present the horrors of war graphically in order to be forceful.
Another artwork is The Drowning Girl. Drowning Girl, also known as Sacred Hearts or I Don't Care, I'd Rather Sing, is an American painting in oil and synthetic polymer paint on canvas by Roy Lichtenstein, based on original art by Tony Abruzzo. The painting is considered among Lichtenstein's most significant works, perhaps on a par with his acclaimed 1963 The Beach One, one of the most representative paintings of the pop art movement. Drowning Girl was acquired by the Museum of Modern Art in 1971. The painting has been described as a masterpiece of melodrama and is one of the artist's earliest images depicting women in tragic situations, a theme to which he often returned in the mid 1960s. It shows a teary-eyed woman on a turbulent sea. She is emotionally distressed, seemingly from a romance. Using the conventions of comic book art, um, a thought battle reads, I don't care, I'd rather sink that than call Brad for help. This narrative element highlights the cliche melodrama, but its graphics, including Band-Aid dots that echo the effect of the printing process, reiterate Lichtenstein's theme on painterly work that imitates mechanized reproduction. The artwork was created in 1963. As for the purpose, it has been theorized that artworks Drowning Girl, Frightened Girl, and Hopeless were inspired by his first marriage to Isabel Wilson, whom he divorced in 1965. His former girlfriend, um, Letty Eisenhower, stated, take his series of crying girls. I think Roy was always very angry with Isabel. The crying girl are the crying girl are what he wanted women to be. He wanted to make you cry, and he did. He made me cry. So occasionally in his paintings, I think that he revealed something of himself. Another artwork is Wham. Wham is a large two-canvas paintings by the American pop artist Roy Lichtenstein that takes place composition from a comic book strip. The left-hand canvas features an American fighter plane firing a missile into the right-hand canvas and hitting an approaching enemy plane. Above the American plane, the words of the pilot appear in a yellow bubble. I press the fire control and the head of the rocket stays through the sky. The outline of the resulting explosion emanates in yellow, red, and white. The work's onomatopoeic title, one, jogs diagonally upward to the left from the fireball in yellow, as if in visual response to the words of the pilot. The painting is rendered in the format tradition of machine-printed comic strips, thick black lines enclosing areas of primary color and lettering, with uniform areas of band-aid dots, purple for shading um, on the main fighter plane and blue for the background of the sky. This artwork was created in the 1963. As for the purpose, Worm flies straight out of the pages of popular war-based comic books, molding the myths of young men who were too young yet to fight in either the Cold War on, or the one starting to hit Vietnam. It is It is attacking dramatic images of war promoted by comics and Hollywood films in the Cold War era. Guam was completed just before the US became heavily involved in the war in Vietnam. It could be read as a warning of the implications of such a war. Liechtenstein made realistic paintings of an unreal world. His art is gloriously paradoxical, and the cleverest paradox is that, as in Guam, the imaginary world turns out to have echoes into the actual one or into actual one.